Hey you, thanks for stopping by. Yes, you've read the title correctly, you're not seeing things, the thumbnail is exactly what it appears to be, and yes, the date is correct. What you're about to watch is a review of the latest Joe Goldberg novel, a prequel in fact, titled You First, and you're about to watch it months ahead of its release. First things first, see what I did there? I have to give a huge thank you to Caroline Kepnes, the author. There's something uplifting about hearing from someone that inspires you. We got to talk a little more this time around compared to when you sent me an advance copy of book 4, and each and every one of those interactions, quick reply, brief exchange, conversation over the phone, they all have the same positive impact on me. You are to me what Stephen King likely is to you, which makes me all the more grateful to have this opportunity. So once again, thanks. The only rule that I am to follow is that I can't directly quote the book. My advance copy is uncorrected, so what I've read isn't a finalized print. So if I quote something, there's a chance I could be relaying something that'll change. Unlikely, but still a risk I'm not to take. I suppose I could paraphrase, but since the book won't be out for at least another 4 months, I'm only going to do that in a way that only describes the themes explored in the book, as this will be a review free of spoilers. But first, a moment of silence for Monica Kepnes, Caroline's mother, whom this book was dedicated to, as the first release to come out without her mother here with us. Now, let's get on with the video. Every You book is a new beginning for Joe, but You First is the beginning. Joe before he meets his first You, therefore showing us what he was up to before, how his first came to be, and perhaps an explanation for why he wants a You. At the base level, without a You, Joe is an average guy doing his own thing, and when he finds himself in pursuit with a woman, that's when his issues start to show. Forget mindset. Like it or not, everyone has something processing in their mind that would be subject to judgment if the whole world knew about it, or were able to read it like a book. What matters more is filter and how your mindset takes form in the real world where it can affect others. You First begins by introducing us to Joel's raw, original mindset before Beck and even before Candace, followed by slowly revealing piece by piece what molded that mindset and determined his filter, or lack thereof in some cases. This book has a smaller ensemble of characters. Typically, there's usually something in the book that calls for a longer list of names, like a large group of friends, of a love interest, Joe's fellow writers at Harvard, the production of a movie, or even just family, neighbors, and community members collectively. Now, although there is a complete set of characters, there's just not a huge abundance of them like we're used to, but it is still realistic without making the world feel too small. In a way, I actually prefer this, because each character gets their fair share of spotlight. Too many characters and then some of them start to feel useless, or that their potential was wasted because it's spread too thin among characters they could have cut in order to better accommodate. However, if I had to choose, next time I would add just a few more characters. I'm talking 1, 2, no more than 3 more. Just to have it to where there's plenty but not infinite. And there are definitely characters in the book that are mentioned that I think could have been present to help accomplish that. So it's not even that pieces to the puzzle were missing, it's that not all of them were used. But not all of them are needed either, so it doesn't hurt the book at all. On the use of characters topic, let's also be sure to discuss the relationship I had with these characters as the reader. For me, it was like I was getting to know Joe all over again, which is a good thing. Up until now, the 5th book, Joe's past has been kept a mystery. The show gives you flashbacks that shed a little light on things that help you piece them together. In the books, however, we're lucky if we get one mention of his mother. This book changes that. And there's one thing in particular that I had been dying to know about Joe, possibly more than his mother. And we got that in this book, and it was everything to me. It wasn't made into a focal point or anything like that, but it definitely gave me enough to go home with. The love interest is both a different story but also a familiar story at the same time. There are questions that linger throughout the book that we tend to have for them. What do they think of Joe? How do they treat a possible relationship with him? How will they respond if they learned more about him, especially his dark side? Will they meet expectations and rise to the occasion like Joe thinks they will? And if so, what will that look like? Well, this is a prequel, so it's not a matter of if this will be the start of Joe's pattern that he's known for, it's how that pattern unfolds and where it ends in this particular story before we get to the next one. But what makes it different is that this is Joe before his first kill, before he's had highly traumatic experiences out in the real world, like Candace, to then influence what his next experience will be like. When we first meet him in book 1, he's already established. In book 1, he's merely a starter pack. He hasn't experienced much, but enough for the seed to be planted. It's how the plant is watered by the love interest and everyone else around him that will determine how he grows, which we can presume by the books that followed that it won't end well, that it doesn't end well. The mystery, however, is who gets the blame and why. Sometimes the books end in Joe getting found out, other times they end in a happy ending that was abruptly sabotaged in the next book. And it's even possible for the wildly unexpected to just cut the cord short, forcing him to move on. How that plays out usually determines what type of love interest we're dealing with by the end of it, because it's never concluded on a note in which she and Joe are still getting to know each other. Other characters, of course, exist for a reason, and they all have served their purpose. Either you love and appreciate them, you hate their guts with a passion, which means Caroline wrote them well enough to be that hated, or you just get them, but there's not a single character that the book can be done without, and that's again because there's less of them. As far as the plot and storytelling goes, think the opposite of Dexter Resurrection, where Dexter Morgan is now being a serial killer in a more technology and social media focused world. Similar to Yu's psychological thriller twist on a rom-com, Yu First seems to be putting an early 2000s nostalgia twist on that psychological thriller rom-com, putting you back in that time when the modern technology that helps Joe out a lot was still coming to be, during a time where life was simpler, but a time where the world was just beginning to fall apart, directly post 9/11. Now, the formula is a little different, but also more or less the same. There's slightly less chapters, which means technically you're not reading as much build-up to get to the exciting parts, but the build-up is still executed the same way. I'd be curious to see how a more fast-paced Joe Goldberg novel will turn out. The sequel books had a tendency to use a bit of legacy elements from previous books as a B-plot to the main story that also ties any remaining knots to that previous installment. Since this is a prequel that came out after one of the most open-ended stopping points we've ever gotten in book 4, I had a theory that somehow this book was going to set up for the sequel to that book. So I thought book 5, despite being a prequel, would lay the foundation for book 6, which would finally continue where we left off with the ending of book 4. An intermission plus prelude, so to speak. It was the only way I could make sense of why Caroline would choose to do a prequel now, when this would have done much better after book 3, and then release what we got in book 4 after that. I was wrong. That theory is not correct. You First is its own playground, and it's for the best, since it doesn't present itself as a prequel. Anyone and everyone can read it at any point without having to read book 3, book 4, even book 1. It just does its thing. It starts from the beginning, and I think that's what a prequel should be. My number one gripe with the Star Wars prequels is that they're extremely obvious prequels. When someone watches them, they just know they're missing something if they hadn't watched the originals, which isn't great for the viewing experience at all. You First fixed that, and the book is better off on its own because of it. And I don't consider that a spoiler. I feel comfortable sharing that in a spoiler-free review because I feel like the only person who had that theory. The ending is just as satisfying as the beginning. It keeps you on your toes. First you think it's going to go this way, then boom, plot twist. Now it may go this way, and bam, another plot twist. And ultimately, it still ends in the way you least expect, and leaves you feeling some kind of way about everyone involved. And honestly, it ended on such a conclusive note that if book 6 was another prequel, I'd be happy with that. I'm actually excited by the idea of there being a prequel collection of Joe Goldberg novels, at least 3. So Caroline, please give us 2 more. This book and the present books actually might have already introduced who the next love interest could be in said prequel. Another reason why I think Caroline went this route is because while it is debatable as to whether or not it was a good time, this is actually time. 2 times now have You and its predecessor Dexter returned in the same year. We got season 3 of You the same year we got Dexter New Blood, and the 5th and final season of You the same year we got Dexter Resurrection. Right before that, we had Dexter's prequel, Original Sin, which was unfortunately cancelled after it had been renewed for a second season. Who's to say you can't come back and take its place, now that Caroline's provided us with the source material? That's how good this book is, that it could be the helm of another hit Netflix series while we wait for Providence. Thank you all for watching. Please consider subscribing and stick around for the spoiler review that will be out in a couple of months, sometime closer to release. Special thanks once again to Caroline Kepnes for supplying me with an early copy of the book. See you guys all again next time. Goodbye.